8:10 is the time. It's AM 650 KGAB Radio. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. It's a Friday. Glad you made it. 16 degrees on the foggy side out there, which I guess, Evan, that means what? Tough time driving in? Just slick? Just ugly out there? What is it?
Yup. Slow driving is the key.
Yeah. Evan Blauser is with me from Wyoming Liberty Group. First off, congratulations on victory with the corporate income tax, which for now is dead.
Right.
Okay.
At least until next year.
So next year.
We're very happy to have that happen.
And I'm glad you see until next year. Now, here's my prediction. Next year, you're going to see this beautiful round pink body with a dress, high heels, and lipstick. And they will name it something else, but it'll be the exact same thing. So you just got to keep an eye out for something like that. But that was kind of a close one. It basically died in committee.
Yeah, we've been working on that for weeks, not myself personally, but you know, that's a huge victory for us, and we're happy to at least push it back one more year.
Right. Okay. Now this one is talk about a pet peeve of mine. We were talking before I came on the air here about studies. I mean, I just go crazy every time I hear about the next study, and I do think that most studies are scams. There are companies out there that do studies and they sell them to government saying, oh, you have to have a study about putting in that stop sign or whatever it might be. So this is a study to take a look at Medicaid expansion. And tell me if I'm wrong, I think it's pricey.
Right. So you'd be correct. Yeah. So this is Senate File 146. It's the Medicaid cost study. And what it's trying to do is look at the cost associated with expanding Medicaid to able-bodied adults making 138% of the federal poverty level. Now, I would be completely on board with this. You know, I think it needs to be studied. I think it's an answer or it's a question that needs an answer, but we already have the answer.
Yeah.
You know, the Department of Health, the Kaiser Family Foundation, the Foundation for Government Accountability, the Wyoming Liberty Group, we've all been looking at this for years and years and years.
So there are multiple studies out there. There's no reason to do another one.
Right. And the Wyoming Department of Health actually released a study last year, only a few months ago, that had a price tag, a low end and a high end, and a middle ground of a price tag for Medicaid expansion.
Okay, let's take a look at what was the low end.
Right. So we're talking about 10,000 people enrolling in Medicaid.
Right.
And then we're talking about the high end being 42,000 people enrolling in Medicaid.
Okay.
And the middle ground that almost everyone has agreed on, and you know, our calculations have said this as well, is that 27,000 people would enroll in Medicaid, and that would cost the state about $17 million a year.
Okay. Now we know though from other states, because they keep saying, well, states around us have passed it.
Right.
And let's take a look at what happened to the states around them. And one of the things I noticed in pretty much every single state, whatever is predicted, this is how many people are going to enroll. Far more people enroll. Now, why is that?
So we call it the woodwork effect. And that's where we haven't accurately accounted for how many people are actually falling below that 138% threshold. So they kind of come out of the woodwork and will enroll, you know, that's people that are coming off of their private health insurance because it's free health insurance, you know, quote unquote. That's people who are going off of their employer plans onto Medicaid. And, you know, it's incredibly hard to actually accurately predict that.
Can we also bring in then people, and this has been a big problem in states like Illinois, people who basically go on vacation in another state in order to get their Medicaid. So we can expect people from other states to come rolling in.
Right. So that's happened in the past. I like to refer to it as medical tourism.
Yeah.
Some people go to Canada. Some people will come here. You know, wherever they can get the cheapest health care is where they're going to go.
And if it's free, that's as cheap as it possibly gets.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's no way that we're paying for this with extra taxes or anything like that.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like we already have a study here. You have all of this information laying in front of you, a bunch more in your head. And I've done this on the air many times. I've read study after study. Do you know what makes the state of Wyoming think, anybody in the House or Senate think that we need another study?
Well, you know, so my prediction and my answer for why we would actually do this study is that I think the legislators are trying to eventually take credit for expanding our Medicaid. So, you know, this is a good way to kind of kick the can down the road, and then eventually they'll come back with another Medicaid expansion bill and try to pass that, instead of having this ballot initiative from the Fairness Project come into our state and then they won't get any credit for it.
Okay. Now let's talk about the ballot initiative, because
Right.
in some surrounding states, they weren't able to get it past the House and the Senate. So they did a ballot initiative and got it passed that way. How does that work?
Right. So, you have to go out to the two different communities, and you have to collect signatures and everything like that. The threshold for Wyoming is significantly higher than the surrounding states, but if it can happen in Nebraska, if it can happen in Utah and Idaho, then there's,
Sure.
Of course it can happen here.
All right. So what I want to take a look at next, because to me this is the fun of it. Let's take a look at, they want to do a study. How much is it going to cost? And there's one guy who's going to get a really well-paid, cushy job out of this. So
Absolutely,
we'll
yeah.
take a look at that next. AM 650 KGAB.
KGAB.com.
8:17's the time. It's AM 650 KGAB Radio. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. All right, with me in the studio from Wyoming Liberty Group. And as we talk about this, we're going to go through the numbers, which to me are the fun of all this. But Evan Blauser is with me in the studio. Wyoming Liberty Group has, you said, done some studies on this.
Correct.
Now, I bet you don't have the numbers in front of you, but just for the fun of it, can you think of how much Wyoming Liberty Group might have spent doing a study on Medicaid expansion?
Well, they spent my salary, and I'll
Okay.
tell you, it's
Yeah.
it's not as much as $100,000.
Okay. Now, and actually, isn't it 200, like 250 or something like
Right.
that? for the whole
So
thing?
it's $110,000 for the actual employee, and
Yeah.
then he gets a budget of $150,000. So
Okay.
right. So we're looking at almost a $250,000 investment there.
See, if I were you, I would go to Susan Gore and go, "Excuse me, you're underpaying me," because this guy for the Susan's not happy with me right now, but you can go ahead and do this. This
Right.
guy for the state of, if he works for the state of Wyoming, whoever they hire, again, how much?
$110,000.
$110,000. I'm not going
Right.
to ask you how much you make, but I bet you it's nowhere near $110,000.
It is not that,
Okay,
yeah.
So this guy is going to get that much money, and that includes its salary and benefits and so on. Total
Correct.
that, right? All right.
Correct.
And yet, here's a group, a private group, that's decided to do the same study, and many other organizations across the country have done the same study, and it didn't even cost that much in the person's salary. So how does the state justify that?
Well, so they're going to look at actuarial data. They're going to have data from the Census Bureau, but if we can build off of the study done by the Department of Health, then there's no saying that their study is going to come to any different conclusion. You have to ask yourself, what are they going to glean from this study that we haven't known before?
All right, now let's take a look at how much it's going to cost for the study, not the employee,
Right.
but how much they say it's actually going to cost to do the study. And my question, and I haven't found an answer yet, how does it cost that much? Because I guarantee you, I mean, I've studied Medicaid expansion myself,
Right.
and I can sit down on the weekend and just go ahead and get online and look at actual studies,
Right.
and it doesn't cost me that much to do it. So what exactly are they doing with this money? How does this work?
So I'm not actually familiar with the specifics of it, but I would think that they need that money to have access to certain data that we wouldn't have access to otherwise. They're using different softwares to try to put it together. They may have something that creates really fancy graphs and stuff like that. But
I'm sorry, that's still not $100,000.
Right. The bottom line is that the money is not justified for this actual study.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my next, and I know that members of the House and Senate would completely disagree with me on this, but if any one of them wanted to do a study, we've got a year before the next session. And they certainly, I know they all have day jobs, but they certainly have enough time during that year just to sit down and do the study themselves. Now, you research with Wyoming Liberty Group. What you do is research.
Correct.
I would say that the vast majority of information that's out there is already available out there. And again, you just go look it up.
Yeah. So Kaiser Family Foundation has great data that they compile from all across the nation. They have, the cost per enrollee. They have the actual cost, the state cost, federal. They have all the data out there that's necessary to conduct a study.
Okay. Then you would take the economy of Wyoming, which is different than these other states. And so once you and I know how to do this. Once you get the numbers from other states, you would just adjust that to the Wyoming economy, and there's your conclusion.
Right.
I'm
right.
actually right about something. What do you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely.
There you go. Okay.
Absolutely.
And to sit down with a calculator and figure that out. Okay, we can include the cost of the calculator, and I guess maybe the cost of batteries.
$12.
$12. What's
Right.
the cost of batteries for the calculator? So I'm being sarcastic, but I don't see where this cost comes in. So do you have any idea? I know I asked it before and you didn't answer, but I'm thinking maybe you don't know. How do they come up with it costs this much?
So I'd love to see the numbers on this and
Yeah.
what costs is associated with what data that they're getting in, what software that they
Yeah.
have. You know, I for the life of me, I couldn't think of
Okay.
anything that could add up to $150,000.
All right. Now, the guy who gets paid $110,000 to do the study, how long is this supposed to take him to do the study?
So the study is due on November 15th, 2019,
2019,
according to the
okay.
bill. So
And then he's out of a job?
correct, yeah.
Okay.
So he's a full-time government employee until November.
Will you excuse me if I'm a little suspicious about that? Because once, most government jobs don't go away. They'll find an excuse or reason to need the guy.
Right. And I mean, if I'm the Department of Insurance, which is the agency that's going to get this employee, I would try to keep him on. If I'm justifying spending $110,000 on him in the interim, then that's a very valuable employee. Might as well hang on to him.
Oh, whose idea was this?
So this was Senator Scott's idea. He is the original sponsor of the bill, and I don't want to badmouth the senator or anything
No, that's
like
my
that.
job. That's my job.
But so at the hearing that I went to, that was amending the bill, discussing the bill, he was not aware of the previous study done by the Department of Health.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Now, okay,
right.
hang on now. Now that he's aware,
Right.
been made aware of the previous bill, you would think he would say, "Oh, we've already done that. Well, then I guess we don't need to do that anymore." But what was the reaction?
So he actually went ahead and said, let's go ahead with this bill. There's language in the bill that says that it would actually compare this study to the 2018 study.
Yeah. There's always a clever way to do that.
Right.
Then at that point, again, this is my job, not yours. I really have to wonder about the motivations of the study in the first place. But let's play with that just a little bit. We'll do it next. It's AM 650. 632-6500 is the phone number, or 888-503-6500. Okay, so let's have some fun here. And I know this is I'm asking you to speculate a little bit, but okay.
Sure.
So what is they do? State of Wyoming spends this money and does this study on Medicaid expansion. Now they have the facts and figures in front of them. What's the purpose? Why do they have these numbers? What do they want to do with it?
Right. So that's the question you have to ask yourself. If we already have the study, what would justify another study? And my guess is that they're going to turn around, use this study to justify a Medicaid expansion bill. And pretty much every Democrat who ran last year and is now in office ran on expanding Medicaid. So, of course, they want the credit for expanding Medicaid. They don't want it to come down to this ballot initiative.
Yeah.
They want to go back to their constituents and say, look what I delivered you.
But couldn't we say then that the Republicans want a ballot initiative so they can say, but I didn't vote for it?
Right. That would play into their hands. It's all about credit taking and everything like that.
Yeah, I say that because I guarantee you there are some Republicans out there who would love to expand it, but they can't say that because it's political suicide. So if you can go ahead and do a study and get a ballot initiative going and it passes, don't look at me. I didn't do anything.
Right. My hands are off of this.
Yeah.
It's in the hands of the citizens, everything like that. I don't think that that's a very large leap to make. I think you're correct in that.
Okay, now here's the next one. What are the odds? Again, we're speculating.
Right.
There's speculation here. That they would come back with a study that would say, oh, don't do this.
That is, I doubt that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean...
So we can say that the study has a foregone conclusion.
Correct. Right. And we can say within a margin of error that it's not going to be any different than the previous studies.
Yeah.
One of the things that I actually agree with is they want to investigate the reimbursements to doctors and physicians, which I think hasn't been accurately studied in the state of Wyoming yet. But of course, we know that Medicaid typically reimburses at about half the rate of private insurance.
Yeah.
So I would be willing to bet that it's not going to benefit doctors and physicians.
For Wyoming Liberty Group, is this the last thing to kill before the end of the session?
No, we have a couple other
Okay.
things, but this is the biggest priority for myself.
Yeah.
I'm the healthcare analyst, so
Right.
this is pretty much consumed my entire life at this point.
Okay, but again, what I'd say to do is go ahead and take the compensation package they're going to offer this other guy, and you go to Susan Gore, and just, hey, look, you've been shortchanging me because the state of Wyoming wants to pay this much, and obviously I am worth a hell of a lot more than this guy, wouldn't you say? And I just want a video of her reaction to that, and you can tell her I said that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well,
and then I'll see you in the unemployment line right after that.
of course,
Probably. Yeah,
you may see my
okay.
resume.
Where do people follow your work?
So they can go to wyominglibertygroup.org.
Yeah.
And, we would love to plug our Medicaid expansion
Sure.
study. It's comprehensive. I
Which
wrote it
the
myself.
state can get for free, by the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Every Wyoming citizen and every person in America can see it.
Whylive.org.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. Just go there, and of course they can find your name. And
Right.
you spell your last name how?
BLAUSER.
And there's where he's written articles about this. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for
Fox
having me.
News coming your way seconds from now. Then we have a look at, sports. Of course, Doug will be in with some legislative news. Update on your weather forecast on dayweather.com. It's AM 650. KGAB.